Yes, so we are live on Facebook. Welcome everyone to this International Peace Forum. And my name is Archie Passanen. I will be your host tonight, together with Tord Björk, who is one of the organizers. And I'm very, very happy to be here tonight with you on this international event, as I'm invited partly because of my engagement in the Transition Network, the Transition Movement, which is a movement that works for not only that works for a peaceful culture. That means that war is not something that is just absence of, or peace is not just something that is not just absence of war. It is also a culture that is regenerative and healthy. So we from Transition Network work for encouraging and educating people to start organizing and building regenerative local cultures that is all that are peaceful, both in between human beings, but also with the planet. So it's not only peace on Earth, it's also peace with the Earth. And I will not talk too much, as I'm not the most interesting person in this room, but I want to give, first of all, the word to Tord Björk, who will more tell you about what we are doing here and why we are here on this digital platform. And Tord, you're also in Sälen, which is quite interesting to know a little bit more about. Welcome, Tord.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Tord Björk, and I'm been active in the environmental movement since early 1970s, the first UN conference on environment in Stockholm, 1972, where we also brought up peace and anti-war issues, ending the ecocide in Vietnam, for instance. So there has been this connection between peace and environment, and actually also solidarity and justice from the very start of these movements. And actually we have to recognize that it's very much the pacifist and the peace movement that started the whole understanding of environmental issues by looking at the strontium-90, how it entered a baby thief because of all these nuclear testing in 1959 that was started by the anti-nuclear weapon movement. But actually Women's International Peace for Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, they addressed the issue already in 1955, saying that alternatives to nuclear power, this is 95, a UN conference, is solar and wind. So with other words, these movements have actually walked side by side since then. And now we are with this initiatives we have here today and this network for people and peace. We hope to bring together again these different strands of actually the same movement. We have been inviting many different kind of peoples because we believe that there are certain things that unite us. We believe in disarmament for a social and just transition, which is also ecological consciousness. That doesn't mean that, of course, there are many different kinds of views on how to reach that. There are radical pacifists. There are those who want to have a stronger defense as long as it's non-aligned. There are different perspectives on this issue. And many of us are not only thinking in terms of NATO, we are thinking in terms of the present world order, including many ecological, economical, and other aspects. We believe in the need of having feminists, of having those fighting for social justice, those fighting against neocolonialism, those fighting for alternatives that are constructive at the ground together. We don't need to have a detailed thing in common, but we do need to speak to each other. And I hope this, what we do now, is a step towards this. This is a special International Day. It's new for People in Peace that started already 3 years ago. And we are now also having this cooperation with the International Peace Bureau, who you will find out soon. Also, many of them are present. Former chairpersons will not only be present today, but also in the second part of these things, which starts tomorrow and the day after, on the issue of similar, where we do address it though in Swedish and Nordic languages. But also today, of course, we also cooperate with the Prague Spring 2 network, which is strong on the issue of linking movements, the social forum movement, which maybe some of you have heard about, these larger events that brings people together, both at regional levels and the world level, up to 100,000 participants. And this network started in 2010, have brought together many of those, especially in Central and Eastern Europe, who have been visiting those social forums in Russia, in Ukraine, in Belarus, in Hungary, in Czechia, etc. So that is why you find today that we have many speakers from Central and Eastern Europe, which is not so common at this kind of events, but we find that very important. And I suppose many have understood that this is really today necessary. And then it's not only Ukraine and Russia, it's also what we have today, people from Romania and Lithuania. We have to look on the total picture in more or less half of Europe. So this is why we bring so different strands, not so common, together, because we believe in the need of building alliances between East and West, North and South. None of these dimensions should be lost, and we have to look upon ourselves as humanity. Of course, we have to look at the realities of states, markets, and so on, but the bottom line is very simple. The kind of multi-issue problem we have right now, we are accelerating crisis in terms of social justice, in terms of wars, in terms of environmental, species extinction, in terms of social relations where some people are excluded and others are privileged. This kind of accelerating crisis we have to address in some way that brings us together as a humanity, with people in common cooperating. And we hope we can do some steps towards this today on this international forum. So, I guess we seems like we have all speakers here, or is OSX the person I believe? Yes, it is, yes. So we have a fantastic person who is now midnight, but we will introduce him later. We will have 3 speakers beginning, and with some 10, 12 minutes or something like that. And then we will make some kind of a shorter pause before we take the second part, where we have some younger activists commenting what has been said, and we do hope that we can get some common discussion. And Arshi Pasanen will introduce more about these things. She is very used, because this transition network gets very many people together, and they are used to the inclusive participatory discussions. Of course, it's limited because we cannot have too long Zoom meetings, you know, that's sort of, there's a certain limit to it. But for some reason, we have found that this People and Peace meeting, people have been participating through 2 days in full, and now we try to make it 3 days. We'll see what happens with that. But we do hope that this can be useful, and with the help also of that we are now recording it so it can be seen afterwards. The special thing why we are in Sälen is this is a ski mountain place where since the 1940s there has been meetings about Swedish defense. And the idea, it's called People and Defense, and the idea was to make people conscious about the need of seeing the importance of having people behind a common policy for how we can defend our country. That has been probably very useful, but what we have seen the last years is that more and more of the discussion has been dominated by those who want us to become members of NATO, also from Atlantic Council, very many from the weapon industry, and of course many militaries, but also every political party and their youth sections are present. Also some of the actual real popular movements like the Red Cross and so on, who are very important, of course, for civil contingency and that kind of issues. This has been sort of a focus for getting more and more people behind the idea that Sweden has to leave its non-alignment policy, started 200 years ago very successfully with an alliance with Russia, actually. And as maybe probably many of you know, this has kept Sweden out of war in such a long time, but the last years with Afghanistan participation and Libya war participation, this has been developing in another direction. And what we see now is that Sweden and Finland together are applying for membership in NATO and very quickly have adopted to what countries like Turkey demand from us to expel Kurdish activists and so on. And sell weapons, that has already started. We had export ban of weapons to Turkey, but that has now been put aside. So we are very fast developing, and we are in a situation where we once need solidarity from the rest of the world in this pressuring situation. And that's why we find this gathering important, what we have here right now. And what we do is trying to put forward a more peace message, the need for peace diplomacy, the need for constructive solutions, transition movements, and diplomacy instead of only focusing on armament and military solutions. Well, Archie.
Thank you, Tord. I was trying to give you a little hand sign that we are, and the time is running. And but thank you very much for that introduction. And I just want to also say some practical information, even though you said it already, Tord. But this first pass will be until 6 o'clock. And in between, we will have a short break before 6 o'clock. And from 6 o'clock, we will have a little longer break. And then we will gather again and listen to the next lineup of keynote speakers. And the whole evening is supposed to end at 7:30. I will introduce our first keynote, which is Ingeborg Breines, who is a Norwegian peace educator Senior Advisor to the World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates, and also has served as Director of Women and Culture of Peace Program at UNESCO. Very welcome, Ingeborg. I will actually highlight you so everyone sees you, or spotlight you. And when you have been speaking for 10 minutes, I will do like this. I will raise my hand, and then you know that it's 2 minutes left. Does that sound clear to you? I don't want to interrupt you while you're speaking, and it's a bit difficult on these digital formats to give hand signs, but I hope this will.
Thank you, it's fine, but I thought I had negotiated more time, but anyway.
Yes, actually, that's true. You have negotiated more time. So if I say at 12 minutes, I raise my hand, and then you know that's, yeah. Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Very much welcome.
So thank you for the invitation, and dear friends, I do wish you the very best in the beginning of the new year. Whilst wishing you this wholeheartedly, I am at the same time full of fear. Fear that we have a continuation of the annus horribilis 2022. Fear of a fatal third world war with use of nuclear weapons. Fear that the devastation both of climate and nature will be more and more harmful and make it difficult to live on this our only one and beautiful blue planet. Fear that the inequalities will grow with a few billionaires and multinational corporations possessing more than all the working people of the world, with the result that an alarming number of people will die from poverty, hunger, and misery. And fear that decision makers will not or are not able to stop the huge quantitative modernization of nuclear weapons, able to wipe out life on Earth many, many times around. When facing existential threats of this magnitude, the rational answer is to collectively search for strategies to halt and stop these threatening developments. But no, instead, we see a militarization unlike anything we have seen before. And this excessive military spending cannot provide the security we want. The military actually makes us less safe, both economically and ecologically, by taking so much of the resources and land that are needed for other purposes, and by the enormous greenhouse gas emissions, radiation, and pollution it brings. The military must not be allowed to continue to make these heavy and damaging boot prints on the soil, the water, the air, and even the atmosphere. Military security does not provide peace, but peace provides security. So peace must be put above security, the UN above any military alliances. Also, my home country, Norway, is militarizing and thereby adds to the sensitivities also in the high north. Military spending is growing dramatically up to meet the minimum 2% of GDP requirements of NATO. We participate in NATO operations, so-called, in distant countries with whom we have no problems. We change our policy vis-a-vis foreign military bases on Norwegian soil, allowing, without, of course, using the word military base, both US and NATO bases. And often it's not clear what is NATO and what is the USA. We alter our rules for sales of weapons, providing weapons and war equipment to countries in war like Ukraine. Accept and participate in ever more frequent and bigger allied military exercises further north towards the border with Russia. We accept nuclear submarines in certain harbors without checking properly if they have nuclear weapons on board. We provide subsidies and huge assignments to the war industry, thereby contributing to the acceleration of the arms race. And Norway is not signing the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Arms due to our membership in NATO. We participate in sanctions against Russia in order to weaken its military capacity, but with the risk of harming dramatically the Russian people and also long-standing friendship and cooperation between our countries. And we keep huge parts of the military, climate and environmental destruction outside our climate budget. Cry, my beloved country, the Nobel Peace Prize country, the country of solidarity that used to consider being a peaceful and friendly country and a strong UN partner as the very best security measure. How can changes come so abruptly? Or is it not so abrupt, but just outside the public eye? It is obviously not easy to avoid being overwhelmed by the multiple interlinked and existential crises facing humanity. Giving in to pessimism and apathy will, however, take us nowhere. We cannot allow the destruction of humanity and our planet. There is no alternative to involvement and to being clearly solution-oriented. It might be difficult to find the right strategies, both on a personal, national, or international level, without the vision of what kind of society we would like to have and be part of, say, in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, and how we want to contribute. One thing is, however, obvious. We cannot continue to misuse the world's resources, natural, financial, and intellectual, for military purposes. Without a serious disarmament effort, the world will not be able to realize neither the UN Sustainable Development Goals, nor the Paris Agreement on Climate, and the new landmark Montreal Agreement on Biodiversity. The very existence of weapons of mass destruction makes the risks of the confrontation in Ukraine particularly high. Both Russian and NATO, that is American, British, and French nuclear weapons, are at play. So are nuclear power plants. No diplomatic and peacemaking initiatives should be untried. The suggestions of Nobel Peace Prize laureate Oscar Arias should be welcomed. He suggests that the US withdraws its nuclear weapons from Europe against a Russian promise not to bring nuclear weapons into Belarus. As the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in August last, and I quote, "We have been extraordinarily lucky so far, but luck is not a strategy. Today, humanity is just one misunderstanding, one miscalculation away from nuclear annihilation." NATO, established in 1947, can no longer be considered a North Atlantic defense organization. It is by far the most powerful military alliance ever. It has global ambitions and fights wars out of area. The first Secretary General, Lord Hastings Lionel Ismay, defined the goal of NATO to be to keep the Russians out, the Americans in, and the Germans down. Seemingly not so very different from what we are presently experiencing. Paragraph 5 is considered a security guarantee of all the 30 member states of NATO. One for all for one. But what does it mean to be protected by NATO? Do we risk being annihilated, bombed back to the Middle Ages in case of a confrontation? To me, the most important paragraph in the North Atlantic Treaty is paragraph 13. It states that you can withdraw by informing the US government, who will then inform the others. War is obsolete and should never be an option. It kills and maims, destroys infrastructure and livelihoods, and sends millions on the run. It should be in the dustbin of history. Yet, war is again close also to us, and war rhetoric and war logic overshadows almost everything. The strong polarization in society affects families, friends, progressive political parties, and even the peace movement. A major dividing line is between those who believe that more weapons to Ukraine is necessary, and those of us who think that if weapons could create peace, we would have had peace in the world long ago, and that we instead need to put all our energy and competence into searching for peaceful and durable solutions, even placing peace before being right. An exceptional strong war propaganda with enemy images, demonization, and suspicion has created a dilemma between patriotism and pacifism, between being within mainstream thinking or risking to be labeled quite brutally as somebody running the errands of the enemy. It is not obvious how to effectively fight fake news and propaganda. Provocative and humiliating rhetoric is hampering international dialogue. Both politicians and the media seem more interested in listening to the war movement and war logic than to the peace movement. Non-violent solutions are hardly worthy of any media coverage. Even so-called ordinary people in the West call on NATO more than the UN. The funding of the peace movement is at a record low, and the COVID-19 pandemic has to a large extent kept people out of the streets in search for diplomatic solutions. The security concept itself needs redefinition to be more in line with human security, food and health security, as well as common security. The common security concept was outlined by the Palme Commission some 40 years back and reiterated in the excellent report Common Security 2022 for Our Shared Future by the International Peace Bureau, the International Trade Union Corporation, and the International Olof Palme Center. The plan is built on well-known UN principles such as freedom from fear and need, disarmament and confidence-building measures, respect for international law, dialogue and conflict prevention measures. It insists on the importance that nobody is safe unless everybody is safe. This we have also experienced in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. The UNESCO Cultural Peace concept was groundbreaking and a blueprint for an alternative security policy and should be relaunched. The cultural peace vision emphasizes peace not only as the absence of armed conflict or war, however important that is, but focuses on the content and the conditions of peace. The culture of peace requires a positive, dynamic, participatory process where dialogue is encouraged and conflicts are solved in a spirit of mutual understanding and cooperation. Imagine that only 8 days of the world military expenditure would be enough to provide 12 years free quality education to all the children of the world. That would be a peace initiative. Peace education is vital to the quest for a culture of peace. Peace and nonviolent conflict resolution should be taught in the regular school system as well as outside. Unfortunately, most school systems today encourage competition and prepare for hierarchical structures instead of training in cooperation and mutual understanding. Countering the ongoing, growing, and sometimes aggressive militarization of the mind in schools, in university, and through mass media is vital. The space left for freedom of expression has been seriously limited by the war in Ukraine, which has brought us back to the black and white thinking of us and them by George W. Bush when he proclaimed in relation to the war against terror, "You are either with us or against us." I will finally only mention that the researcher Erika Chenoweth showed in the study Why Civil Resistance Works that nonviolent actions are twice as successful in reaching their goals than actions allowing the use of force and weapons. Research also shows that peace negotiations must be based and take as a point of departure the real and fundamental problems at hand and listen to the locally affected people. When women participate in peace negotiations, the agreement lasts more than double the time than when negotiations are made by warring parties. We need great models in order to be inspired. Let us look at Costa Rica, who closed down their military and has managed to build a strong health system, environmental system, and educational system. It is high time to replace society's old patriarchal model of economic growth, militarism, domination, competition, control and confrontation, prioritizing warfare over welfare, which risk ultimately to lead into apocalypse and instead build trust and international solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we will have comments and discussion later on. And instead we will go to the next keynote, that is Walden Bello, who is a writer, activist, and journalist, and has a PhD in sociology from Princeton University. He is also the founder of Focus on the Global South, which is a research and advocacy institute in Bangkok. Very much welcome, Walden. I will try to find you here so I can spotlight.
Yes, okay.
We have to add that we think it's fantastic because Walden Bello, every time we invite people from Southeast Asia, we are very ashamed because it's in the middle of the night. Welcome, Walden.
Thank you for inviting me. I won't take very long because I know that it's a very packed program. And also it's, as has been mentioned, it's rather early in January 8th over here in this part of the world. So the first thing is, of course, solidarity to all of you. I know this is a very difficult situation in Europe at this point in time, where there appears to be no will to enter negotiations, either on the part of Russia or on the part of the forces being backed by the United States. And so there appears to be this stalemate that is taking its toll on people, because it isn't just the military issue with all the threats of nuclear war, but the whole impact on people's welfare and all sorts of economic dislocations that are taking place. I am very happy to note that the first speaker, Ms. Ingeborg, had mentioned that there is a global aspect to NATO at this point. And this is very dangerous because, as you know, the United States has recruited NATO nations to participate in constant patrols in the South China Sea as the United States becomes more and more provocative in terms of confronting China. And indeed, in addition to the Ukraine, one of the most dangerous trouble spots in the world today is in the South China Sea. And so, of course, and it's not just the Ukraine and the South China Sea that are problematic. We find, of course, that there has been the election of a new, very, very far right-wing government in Israel, and this has created real problems in terms of really advancing peace in the region, since it does seem like the Israeli government is intent on pushing the agenda of pushing out Palestinians from places where they have lived for a long time. And of course, in Latin America, we have the very, very big problem of environmental crisis, the deforestation of the Amazon, and it's a very hopeful sign that the new president of Brazil, Lula, has said that stopping the deforestation of the Amazon is going to be one of his major priorities. So I think that's one glimmer of light in this period of darkness. The only other thing I would like to mention is, of course, as many of you are aware, the military crisis of militarism, the crisis of the climate, the rise of far-right regimes all over the world, and of course the continuing problems of poverty and underdevelopment are all coming together in a very, very dangerous way, as people like Susan George have pointed out very early on. This is the crunch that we must try to avoid. Finally, with governments seeming to have lost will, or with governments not losing control of the situation, I think that international civil society's role in terms of really pushing the peace, saving the climate, and keeping democracy alive has become ever more important. So it's really up to us at this point in time. Unless civil society internationally gets activated in a very, very decisive way, then there is no hope. So it's really up to organizations and movements like us to take the initiative at this point in time. I would just like to mention lastly that we must also never forget, that we are struggling for human rights and democratic rights, and that we must never forget that we have to also list as a priority the restoration of a legitimate government, the legitimate government in Myanmar or Burma, and that we must stop this horrid military junta from the way that it has railroaded Aung San Suu Kyi, to a 100-year, to being sentenced to prison for until she reaches her 100th year. So that's a whole set of priorities on our platter. Thank you very much for having me tonight. I'll have to sign off right after this because my mind is going. So good luck to all of you as you go on in this very, very important meeting of spirits and minds. Thank you.
We love that you were able to be together with us, Wallenberg, and we will send out links to your articles that have been really useful to us.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Walden, and such a such a lovely thing for you to do, to sit there in the middle of the night and participate. Yes, so our next speaker is Leo Gabriel, who is an Austrian-Mexican journalist and anthropologist. He is also part of the Prague Spring 2 network and member of the International Council of World Social Forum. Very much welcome, Leo Gabriel. I will also spotlight you.
Thank you for having invited me to this important meeting. Perhaps in the introduction, or you already know that I have various hats, starting with my person. I have spent half of my not so short life in Latin America, and some time also in the Middle East. And although my passport is an Austrian, which I lately I've never been so proud about this passport than before, because when we made our leaflets for demonstrations against the war, I always was saying we have to propose a statute of neutrality following the principles of Sweden, of Finland, of Switzerland, and Austria. And now we feel somehow alone, because Austria is together with Ireland, I think, and Andorra, the only countries that declared neutrality. This is an important step in our strategy. And if I say our strategy, I'm referring as well to the Prague Spring 2 network as the World Social Forum, that we don't take sides, even if in the analysis we find that one is the better guy and the other is the worse guy. But it is, as a certain moment in Mexico in the last World Social Forum, we invited some 2 women coming from the bomb shelters in Kiev and Kharkov, and we were discussing about Ukraine, and at a certain moment they knocked the table and say, "Stop it. You are all defending either Putin or you are defending or forgetting about NATO, and if you construct your arguments only about who is the guilty one, you get it all wrong. We do not discuss anymore this kind of politics," she said, coming out 2 days before under the bomb from the bombing. The people want to know, how could we stop this hell? And if you don't have an answer to it, let's forget all the other geopolitical analysis, but you have to get to this answer. And in my intervention, I want to get to some of the experiences coming out of more than 10 years wars in Central America, where I have been through, and I have been busy for about 10 years also with this Syrian conflict. What can we do in order to stop this? Analysis helps, but it does not lead us to a common platform, a common action, because we are all different and we are structured into peace movement, environmental movement, women's movement, and all of these movements have their own priority, which is okay. But if we want to do things together, and we cannot stop this militarization wave which is going on without stopping or contribute to stop this war. That's why I think the most important question is about a strategy, a common strategy. It was very interesting in the about 1 year ago or more, even a year ago, we had these discussion rounds in the World Social Forum with different continents and different kind of movements, so to get people together. And there was one word, one symbol, which came up in all of these meetings and discussion, and this was the word convergence. I think there is now a worldwide consciousness, and that I find extremely positive, about the need of a convergence. You know, in former times, there was in the, let's say, socialist world, the first international, the second, the fourth, and they were killing each other. This is not the case now. I think we are in this privileged position to be able and to intend to converge. But this is not only a question of goodwill. It is not that we all say, we agree that peace is more important than any kind of war and repression and militarization. This is not enough. We have to try to get together in a certain form of an ideological coherence where all the different issues can identify, not only because they are nice people and they say we are for solidarity with others and vice versa, but we have to have this common roof where organizationally then perhaps people come together, but this is not a question of organizing only. It is a question of identity, of universal identity. And I remember very much that I was together with Rainer Braun, the former president of the International Peace Bureau, in order to discuss what could be a common slogan or a common expression of the different kind of movement. I did not hear what has been already said here. We were brainstorming, And we came up with this sentence: we all have to fight for universal disarmament for a socio-ecological transition. Every word means something. Universal. Universal disarmament does not only mean that we have to stop the weapons industry and all these people who earn so much money with wars, but we have to also fight against the repression, the militarization of politics, that the thought, the thinking, the military logic is taken over political logic, over diplomatic logic, and all of that. That means universal disarmament. And why transition? Because we don't have yet, and it would not be good that we had already the definite goal. There is no Bible where we can refer to and say that's what we all want to do as an alternative society. It is a process, and we are in this process. But in order to get further to this process, we have to get together in a converging assembly. And we, in the World Social Forum, have decided finally to not only make a forum where everybody is talking and exchanging experience and in a nice atmosphere in one of the capitals of the South, but to really get a consensus, which does not mean always unanimity, a consensus about what we are going to do, and to fix a global agenda for future actions. Our agenda, we propose, has started already. It doesn't mean that if the World Social Forum says something that millions of people all of a sudden jump out of their homes. Sometimes it's a small thing. There was the idea of a Christmas ceasefire. We probably, our friend here, Sean, is going to talk about that, about the 20th anniversary of this big worldwide demonstration, the biggest in human mankind, in history of human mankind, against the war in Iraq, 15th of February 2003, that we mobilize for this day. And then lately there is upcoming the idea, and I swear to you, it is not my idea because I'm Austrian, of a conference in Vienna, the 7th to the 9th of May, where civil society should come together and produce a process where we really can become an actor, a political actor on the world scene, given the fact that neither the United Nations nor any other international organization has been capable to really stop these wars. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leo Gabriel, for this keynote. Highly interesting. And now we will continue with our program and invite young voices from the civil society, both from peace and equity and farming organizations. And we have today with us Sean Connor, Neringa Tumenaite, and Maximilia Isendal that will give us some reflections on what they have heard this night. And first of all, I would like to invite Sean. Are you here, Sean?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
There you are. I will spotlight you for everyone, and you have around 5 minutes, and I will again raise my hand when 4 minutes have gone, and please just give us a short introduction also of who you are, and yeah, so we know who you are.
Absolutely. Thank you. So my name is Sean Connor, and just about 3 months ago now, I was appointed the new executive director of the International Peace Bureau. For those of you less familiar with the International Peace Bureau, we are a 132-year-old organization now. We won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1910, and we work or function as a sort of global network for peace and peace-related organizations, serving as a meeting point, organizing conferences and different events, as well as campaigns. Two of our biggest campaigns, one is the global campaign on military spending, or GCOMS, and another one is, as briefly mentioned by Ingeborg earlier, a campaign on common security for the 21st century. I could say plenty more on that, but just I want to fill in a couple gaps and bring some of these great presentations together. All three speakers had really insightful things to say, so thank you all for everything you've said. Firstly, I would just like to say there was, of course, with good reason, a lot of focus on two very large, difficult in geopolitical matters, of course, one being Ukraine and the other one being China and the South China Sea, with the potential for a growing Cold War and militarization of the region. Beyond that, of course, I think we need to mention that there are many armed conflicts across the globe taking place in different forms. Some are full-out wars, others are underneath the category of war. I would recommend anyone who is interested to learn a little bit about some of these conflicts. We've had a great series at IPB on the hidden conflicts that are going on. And while a lot of these might not get as much attention on a global level, there is certainly a role for the global peace movement to play, not just in the large European or Asian conflicts, but really at a global level. And I think it's important that we keep that in mind as well when we are talking about the state of the world for peace. Beyond that, I think another thing that I wanted to bring into this a bit more was building directly off what Leo was saying about, and Walden as well, about building a global movement for peace and justice. And IPB, of course, we have been working on the front lines of trying to bring together national, regional, and local peace groups to have conversations with each other. And I think one of the very important points to bring in here is that, you know, as Leo was saying, everyone is focused on their own work, on what they can do at their levels, but there is also that international need for coordination, for working together on an international stage. And this creates oftentimes a lot of a problem, whether it be due to issues of funding. Of course, we don't want to compete with each other for very limited funding. And I think Ingeborg had also mentioned the limited funding that is available at the moment these days for peace movements, as well as many others. So these connections are really important to build in order to really have effective change. I use the GCOMS campaign, or the Global Campaign on Military Spending, as an example of one of the efforts we're doing to really bring this all together. Global military spending last year reached over the $2 trillion mark, which is something we all know is incredibly concerning, and money that the previous speakers have mentioned could be much better used elsewhere to make us secure as a planet. This is climate issues, this is inequality issues, and plenty more. The Sustainable Development Goals, of course, is really a solid base for when we talk about where this money could go. However, the money continues to grow year after year. And so we have been working through the GCOMS campaign to really bring together movements in different countries, on one hand to see what they can do on their national level or local levels to combat growing military spending in their contexts, but also to show the bigger picture of how this all comes together. One nation reducing military spending from one year to the next might not necessarily mean that the global figure is reduced. So that coordination on a global level, and also to have one period of time where those actions are taking a spotlight, can make a bigger difference. And so I think that is something really where the international level comes into play. However, we of course need to strike a balance between the different levels. And one final thing that I will add in at this point is the difficulty of not just the peace movement, but really most, if not all, social movements right now, to get the ear, to get the attention of regular people who are worrying about their day-to-day issues, whether it be not having enough to survive, to put food on the table for their families, whether it be all sorts of crises, or if there are local threats to security, things such as just gun violence, small arms and light weapons, and things of that sort. There are a lot of things that prevent people from coming to these international levels. It can also be really intimidating to do that. So I think it's also really important to stress that we need to meet people where they're at and be open not to immediately talk about this global picture of how the difficult situation we're in at the moment, and to also bring it down to the realistic for the people. With that, I'll end my initial remarks now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean. And next one we want to invite to the spotlight is Neringa Tumenaite. Are you here?
Yes.
And I will just like you also. Very much welcome. Please give a small short introduction also of who you are.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Neringa. Very excited to join this amazing lineup of speakers, and I took a few notes based on what I've heard. I'm a PhD researcher on youth participation, peace building, and climate justice at the University of London. And I'm also a member of the pool of researchers at the EU Council of Europe Youth Partnership and advocacy advisor for the human rights network called United for Intercultural Action. And that's the hat in which I'm here now. I agreed with what the speakers mentioned regarding the war rhetoric spreading. And I think this goes hand in hand with the erosion of democracy, but with glimmers of hope. So we see regimes and leadership with authoritarian tendencies popping up. In certain cases, it is when the population itself wants someone with the iron fist, and we don't need to look far. We see that in Europe as well. And in other cases, the quasi-dictatorial regimes entrench themselves through blood and against the will of citizens, like we see in Myanmar and Iran. And this showcases the extreme limitations, if not failure, of international community, diplomacy, and peace-building mechanisms that we currently have. And I think this brings the question, should the civic society continue aiming to transform the United Nations, or do we need to continue looking for alternatives through solidarity movements? I guess the answer is both. And while shrinking democratic space is glaring in certain regions, we also see positive glimpses. So as Walden has mentioned, many have been extremely glad to see the results in Brazil, with the newly elected President Lula already making steps to highlight the voices of the indigenous communities and committing to fight deforestation in Amazon. And my final point relates to a topic already touched upon, which is military and climate change. What is interesting is that militaries in several countries have commissioned reports which highlight that they have an understanding how climate change poses security risks, and they're aware of that and are willing to invest, which brings the risk of greenwashing as well. So it's something for the civic society to be attentive. And some of the positive examples I wanted to share come actually from this year's COP27, so the UN climate conference, which this year was held in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh. So we know that the global south are disproportionately affected by climate, although the global north generally consumes and pollutes more. And this has been usually debated, and there were not concrete steps taken. But this year has shown a quite strong mobilization between civic society movements and also youth-led movements, with young people coming in from Latin America, Asia, and Africa to advocate for reparations. Well, you may have heard that the Loss and Damage Fund actually has been established. So although through long negotiations, countries from the global north committed to take concrete action, we do not know how the funding mechanism will work, but at least there is political will to take this step. And the final point, which I would highlight, is to increase youth participation in policy and decision-making. Of course, with ensuring that usually less represented groups and marginalized and racialized people are there as well. And I think forums like this, having the youth speaker part, I think it's a great example. And we see that happening more and more. So if usually many of the conferences were just European or just young people or just the senior experts, we now see more of this convergence. And I think that's a positive step. So I'm happy to share this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neringa. And next one to speak is Maximilian Isendal. There you are. I saw you. There you are. I will just spotlight you. Welcome, Maximilian.
Hey, thank you. Yes, so I guess I'm not representing La Via Campesina, of course. I'm just the Swedish member organization, and I'm myself a vegetable farmer and forest owner. And I will also thank you, everyone, for this interesting talk. And of course, what's most connected to what we work with is what was mentioned with the spread of hunger now. And as you may know, according to FAO, the hunger is spreading really much now and increasing really much from 2020 to 2021, and now it's even more last year now. Yeah, so far, like up until now, the increases in prices has not been because of like lack of food, or because of speculation on food and the problems with transport and the prices connected to transport and so on. But still, there is and has been for a long time a decrease in the in production, and there will be even more so now also with the higher input prices and of course with the politics. And one issue that is connected to this conflict is, of course, the trade and access to markets. And one thing they push for a lot is, of course, to have more free trade agreements to make up for the European actors wanting to have a free trade agreement with other actors now that the markets with the Ukraine and Russia are limited. And Sweden is one of those actors that are pushing very much for this, even though the situation for farmers and producers are very bad, and if you still have these free trade agreements, you will push the prices for the farmers down. So yeah, but I think we have also always has to look at the democracy in our own institutions, and right now it's threatened and connected to the EU. The European Commission is attempting to extend their powers over politics and limit the influence of member states regarding both the trade politics and also regarding natural resources. And also to connect with this other difficult political situation globally, we consider the situation for our sister organizations around the world. So, for example, in Palestine. The Palestinian member organization has been raided by the Israel government actors now twice in the last recent time, and very difficult also now in Peru with the situation there. So yeah, that is something we have in mind, of course. It's really connected to peace, of course. And I think, lastly, everyone has mentioned solidarity here. That is, of course, also what we want to base our alternatives on, what we work for. For example, with an alternative in the trade issue. So an alternative to World Trade Organization have another framework built on solidarity instead. But I think I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Maximilian. And time now is 17:12 in Sweden, at least. And I would suggest that one part of peace culture is peace with the body. So we need to move a little bit. And I suggest that we take a break for 3 minutes and get up, shake your legs, drink some water, go to the toilet, and see you in just a few minutes.
Ja, det kan vara så.
Annars skulle vi gå över på andra sidan. Jag har en läroplan också. Men jag vet inte om jag tror.
You see, Sälen copy. Sälen, do you copy? Of course, 3 minutes is not enough to take care of your body, but at least it's something. Hello, Tord. And there are still some people missing. I will give 1 minute more.
Ja.
Back. Okay, Tord. So
Hey, we maybe got we were not giving them enough time, maybe.
no, 3 minutes is not enough to give some love and care for your body. But in 45 minutes, we will have a longer break. And I think we will just continue. Tord, what do you think? Now is the time for a group discussion where everyone is invited to reflect upon what has been said. Tord, would you like to reflect a little bit as a organizer for the event of what you have heard?
No, I'm mainly interested in what people think here. The reason is the following, that I guess everyone feels that we are in really a very deep kind of crisis, and we don't really know what way to go forward. And we gave the speakers and commentators an impossible task: state of the world. So it's very interesting for us to hear, in that very short time we have to our disposal, to have many voices say things, because that shows a kind of diversity that is maybe what we want to hear now, what all kinds of people with different background have to say with this starting point. Acknowledging that we all are a bit, we are wondering, as Walden Bell said, there is really also a drastic change in a country like Sweden that for 200 years had a successful policy, non-alignment policy, and now suddenly things have been changing. And I recommend to listen to the webinar that International Peace Bureau, Word Beyond War, and People Network for People and Peace made in September, where we addressed the consequences of the Swedish and Finnish NATO application with 3 Kurdish speakers. Because this is, well, you can see how drastic changes take place. Sweden before had a weapon embargo against Turkey because this lack of democracy and how it was oppressing. They've been occupying Cyprus since the 1960s. They've been attacking around, and now suddenly we are running there all the time. Oh, yes, yes, tell us what to do next. And together with them, we send our main weapon producer, Wallenberg, and he's for some reason all over the place. And he's also at this People and Defense conference as a main speaker. Suddenly, the intimate core of our policy is shaped together with Wallenberg and Erdogan. And that is a fairly frightening situation. So I would like us to have a lot of 2 minutes that people say things, and we'll see what is on your mind.
Yes, and in order to have some kind of structure, I invite you to use the raise hand button, which you find if you move your little mouse thingy and you see this menu bar down on your Zoom screen, and there's a button called reactions. You can press that and then you can find the button raise hand. We have already, thank you so much, 2 people already in line. Leo Gabriel, please, welcome.
Well, I have a question to our Swedish participants especially. What is it that makes people looking, like somebody said, for strong iron hand do they feel protected? It's a question of fear. Is it a question of political line? We usually could suspect that the far right is pressing for military action and supports the war in one form or another form. Although in my country, in Austria, it's interesting, the far right is the one who sticks most to neutrality, because the far right is populist and they know how to gain votes, and with neutrality here you still can get more votes than against. So I want to know what happened in Sweden. Is there been happening a brainwashing or whatever?
Thank you. Should we have a short comment on that from someone from Sweden before we let Yuri inside? Tord, do you want to give a comment?
No, it would be nice to hear somebody else from Sweden.
Somebody else from Sweden?
Who dares?
Maybe Christer Karneby, no to Sweden. Do you have a comment on Leo Gabriel's question? On what happened in Sweden? Why are we suddenly so eager to jump on board this war train?
We are so afraid, so we don't dare to speak up.
Yeah.
Oh, Archie, two women.
Two women.
Yeah.
Okay, I suppose it's Ulla Klotze. You want to comment on Leo Gabriel?
Yes, I would like to comment, because it's actually Finland who brought Sweden into this bloody shit. I'm sorry. But it was in Finland that the whole debate started about getting into NATO. And as it was with the European Union, where also Finland brought Sweden into the European Union, it was Finland. And when Leo Gabriel says that, how is it possible? It is possible because the Green Party, where I was the vice chair under our current foreign minister, Pekka Haavisto, Green Party, so as to say Green Party. I don't know if he's green or black or red or blue, but he is not green, certainly. And also Li Andersson, the left party. Yesterday or the day before, she said, yes, we had to agree to not being against NATO and agree to having the F-35 US fighter jets because we went into the government. I would like to ask, did you have to go into the government? Couldn't you have stayed outside and said, sorry, thanks, but no thanks? We have no party in Finland that is against. Not the Greens, not the left, nobody. And it was due to Finland's turn that Sweden turned. I'm sorry to say, and I'm really deeply ashamed of it. And if you consider, Leo, I would like to give you a challenge, because in 21, our president, Sauli Niinistö, said that we should have a new OSCE summit. And he even offered to have it in Helsinki, because Helsinki had it in 50 years ago. And we were so great. We had a new agenda for peace in Europe. And our president said we should have it. And he said he has got support from Berlin and from Washington and from Moscow and even from Beijing. Now it's bloop, disappeared, the whole thing. And I would really, really, really ask Leo if there is any kind of courage and will to give a push to OSCE. Now Vienna could do it. Austria could take the card from Finland and give Sauli Niinistö a blow in his face and say, we do it, you didn't, you made the suggestion, but you didn't take it further. So a challenge to the Austrians: take the card from the Finns who have betrayed everybody, the Swedes, everybody who believes in peace, the peace movement, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will give the word to Yuri. Welcome, Yuri.
Good evening, and I was excited to hear so interesting presentations, and of course I totally share disturbing observations of presenters, and Leo Gabriel is totally right when he said that we should not seek who to blame. We should first of all to wake up collective responsibility of humankind for peace and resolution of all pressing problems such as climate change, such as wealth inequality, all obstacles for human development and welfare. So I would like to ask, maybe propose to discuss what ways of waking up collective conscience of humankind do you see? Because peace movements now, unfortunately, are stuck in national security and security of alliances agendas. And very dependent on the media, and we know that mainstream media are just another wing of military production complex. And of course, to overcome that, we need effective approaches. How to resist war system, how to change current militarized economy. It is a task probably for generations, and we must do maximum efforts to not only to respond these pressing needs of today, but to preserve peaceful future. Your thoughts, I would be glad to hear. Thank you.
Just a clarification, was that directed to Leo Gabriel, Yuri, or to the assembly?
To the assembly, and again, I thank very much to Leo for his thoughts, and probably maybe Leo would start to propose some ideas how to wake up conscience of humankind.
Leo, would you like to reply shortly to Yuri's?
Well, I said several things about convergence of movement, of becoming a political actor, a civil society. And I think that it is okay, it's wonderful to be here in this webinar and talk among friends, all of us. But I think we have to a little bit more go out to confront people who need to be confronted, to assure people who have doubts, but to be physically present and not always hide behind a computer. But also thank you very much for this suggestion, Ulla, that I know that OECD is in a big crisis, and the best would be to take up the Helsinki agreements and turn it around. And for that, we need also to show strength, because the government by itself is not going to do it.
Thank you. Sean, welcome.
Yeah, first off, just to say I agree completely with that remark from Leo, as well as what was said by Yuri just prior to that. It's very important that we go out and we're not just speaking to kind of an echo chamber of us who already believe that we need peace and we need a new form of security, et cetera, et cetera. I just wanted to go back to one point, specifically common security. And of course, you know, there are endless different themes in which the peace activists or peace movement as a whole is involved and should be involved. You know, there's many different ways to be involved, but I do believe common security to be a sort of uniting factor for many people, not just in the peace movement, but social movements quite at large. And specifically the need to change our definition of security. You know, we here, of course, understand security in a way where it's more focused on human security, on the need to protect people rather than militarized security. However, really, the hegemonic view of security across the world continues to be a militarized security, that militaries make us safe. And this is something that is so deeply entrenched in learning systems and how we learn about history, the present moment, politics, to where that's something that really takes a lot to change, but can be done very well as well at an individual or small group level, as Leo says, going out and talking to people about how they understand security, why they understand it that way. I see that to be really an important way that we can change the idea. Just as one quick example here, I had a conversation with my father, I believe it was sometime over the summer, you know, as Sweden and Finland were talking about joining the NATO alliance. And what he says, I believe to be something that a lot of people were thinking. Well, you know, Putin expected by invading Ukraine, he could do that without any consequences. And I'm not speaking from myself here. This is what my dad was saying. But now he sees, you know, Sweden and Finland will join NATO and that he will be worse off and he'll have to back off. And it's this logic of, oh, we have a stronger military presence now, so Putin will learn his lesson. But we know that's not how these things work, and it's clearly not how it has played out in real time, in reality. And so I really had to speak for a long time with my father to really convince him, and I still don't know if he's fully convinced, but you know, this idea that hasn't changed the way that Putin is operating. He has nuclear weapons, you know, he has a defense or a supposed defense that could end the world, and that you know, 2 extra countries joining a NATO alliance, however bad that is for Russia, is not going to decrease tensions. If anything, it's just going to escalate them, and it's going to make the situation more dangerous than it's been. And so really to bring that to people, but also of course the idea that, you know, security is taking care of the people within our societies. This is something really where I see the peace movement has complete reason behind it, but can also really make a difference in small conversations with people who are outside of our movement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean, for that remark. Karin Utas Karlsson, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I raised my hand to reply to Gabriel's question. From Sweden, since I'm from Sweden, I notice very much what is happening here, and it has got to do a lot with the way media puts the state of the world and especially the Ukraine crisis. This is really horrible to see, and Sweden is outstanding in Russophobia since a long time, also before the Ukraine crisis or war. I have an example of that, but I don't need to say it. I think this is a fact and is well known now. I do put blame on the media, and this is very difficult for us to get out at the moment and explain reasons for the war and to show the situation and how dangerous this is, that we are heading for a nuclear war and we have to stop the wars, as you have said. But I'm sure that influences from other places and also from us in the peace movement will change this. But we are in a hurry. And I agree to those who have spoken before me here about going out into the streets, talk to people, and use our writing and our voices to and not to give up or give in. And also I'm thinking in terms of common security, and this is a way, and also put that with peace education, conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is needed to know, to inform about, to train, to show other ways than military ways, because this doesn't work. Deterrence doesn't work. I think maybe also the fact that there are nuclear weapons on both sides is one of the reasons why there is a war in Ukraine, and that I would be interested to discuss further. Anyway, this is what I wanted to say. We have to work to change the media, and people will follow. They follow the media very much. It's sad to say. I've been in an exhibition and talked to people, and this really has gone into the minds of people. Sorry to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just to say that Sean has put a link in the chat for those of you who haven't noticed it, for commonsecurity.org regarding the 2022 report. Lena Jarlöf, welcome.
Thank you. I will agree very much with Karin Utas Karlsson and talking about the situation in Sweden just now. We really are in some sort of information war. And for example, this conference is from ordinary media seen as a disinformation. It's very much so. Now there is a campaign from ordinary media that what we are saying here and what we are talking about and the peace movement is very dangerous and naive, and we are coming with disinformation. And I think it is very difficult, and we have to be strong and go on and very much, because people are very misled, greenwashed. They do not really understand the danger of going into NATO, because they see it as a more secure. They will be guarded by NATO, but they don't realize they also will be some sort of place for how do I say it in English, a goal for weapons. So I think we have to go on very much to spread knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. Yes, it's truly astonishing that wanting peace is something so provocative
Yes.
to today's culture. It's truly amazing, actually. Stig Broqvist, welcome.
Thank you. My English is not so good, but I will try to get my answer on Leo Gabriel's question about how could it happen in Sweden that we change our security policy that has been so good in 200 years. And I think that very important is the mass media that has given only one side of the conflict in Ukraine. They have not mentioned anything about the Minsk agreement and about the history, complicated history for Ukraine. And when the coup or revolution, what you want to call it, in 2014, the illegal government change, then the mass media agree totally with USA's point of view. And when some of us, Tord and I and some other people, wanted to arrange an exhibition about what happened in Odessa in the 2nd of May 2014. The official Sweden tried to stop this exhibition. Now, if people say that if I and other people say something about the complicated history for Ukraine and so on, they just say we are for Putin, we are agents for Putin and so on. And I think that those parties, two parties in the parliament in Sweden that is against NATO, the Green Party and the Left Party, I think they are so afraid to get mentioned as a Putin agent that they keep very low and don't say so much and so on. And I myself could have sometimes any letter to the newspaper about this question, but it's very difficult. Some letters to the newspapers are stopped and so on. So I think the political and mass media and military industrial establishment in Sweden has for a long time tried to get Sweden in NATO, and the Social Democrats Party was they get so pressed before the election that they didn't dare to have a real discussion, and they just changed without a real discussion. Excuse my my English is not so good. Thank you.
Thank you. Your English is perfect. And next on is Ingeborg Reines. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. I would like to try to reflect on the question that Yuri has put forward, how to wake up human consciousness. I think that might be the most vital question these days, and I certainly do not have any answer to it. But I think that it is very important that we, the peace movement, not only work with the environmentalists, but also with artists, because at least what I've seen both in the international peace movement and in Norway, the artists are less afraid than others to come up with new solutions. And they bring music and so that might move not only the intellectual part that we in the peace movement is underlining, but also try to move the feelings. And it is essential. And when working for many, many years in UNESCO on the culture of peace, that was also one of the reasons that we underline so strongly that we need to develop a culture of peace, meaning not cultures for peace, which is important, but also broadly cultures of peace. And I would like to encourage people to go into the UNESCO website and look at what was done during this, particularly during that period in history where we could freely work for a peace dividend between 1989 with the fall of the wall and 2001 with the start of the war against terror. Because in that period, there was a creative approach to peace issues that took us much further than we have been able to, neither before nor after. So how do we find, again, a possibility of breaking up this militarization and opening up for a true culture of peace? So not an answer, but a suggestion for some guidelines that UNESCO and the UN developed with the program towards a culture of peace. Experience that is broadly needed today to counteract the strong militarization and also simplistic way of approaching world affairs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ingeborg. That was really nice to hear. I also strongly believe that we need to create narratives, cultural narratives that we can identify ourselves with, narratives of peace. And also Sean is writing in the chat. I want to just mention that there are really nice comments in the chat. So please take a look there also. We have even from in the Appalachian bioregion of Western North Carolina, some participants. Very nice to hear. Next one is Kerstin Tuomala. Welcome.
Hey, are you? I'm hörs jag?
Ja, det hörs.
Okay. Good evening. I want to answer to Leo Gabriel also, because in Finland there is a very broad gap between the people and the government and the president. They are talking about that we want to join NATO, but they really never asked us. They promised a referendum, but they did not keep that promise. So the people is deceived, and the media is talking that the people wants to NATO. The parliament talks the people wants to NATO, and that's why the parliament wants to NATO. And it's a lie. It's not true, because they have never measured it. So I think this is something like fascism. The media is lying, and there is a very big gap about those who decide about our businesses and our lives
and the people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kerstin. Ulla Klotzer, welcome.
Well, first of all, to Karin, it's the same thing in Finland. The media is totally black. There is no kind of debate of reasons for the Ukraine war or so, and the Russophobia is really 100%. So it's really hard. When Leo said we should try to go into the streets, we had a NATO demonstration mid autumn in Helsinki, and we were 50 people, and the people in the streets were shouting at us, Putin, not only Putin agents, but much worse things since we were women. So I feel unsafe to go on the streets, being against the war and against NATO. And I even have difficulties within my own family. I can't discuss the matter at all with my sister, for instance. And we don't even meet each other as frequently as before, because she thinks that Putin will attack Finland and that's it. So the situation is, I can't even describe it. I would never, ever have thought that it would be like this in Finland. But it is, since the whole political elite and the whole media is pro-NATO. And I would like to say to Kerstin, you are far up north and maybe a little bit more protected than we. But in the far south of Finland, it's total NATO support, and the opinion polls are saying that 85% of the Finnish people are supporting NATO. I can imagine that it's not 85, but if it's let us say 70, the other ones do not want to open their mouth because they are really afraid of their relatives and their friends and so on. And Ingeborg's suggestion with Artists for Peace is really fantastic. But we have tried to kick Artists for Peace in Sweden, in Finland, in Norway, to do something together. And there is no initiatives. I don't know, they might be too engaged in other things, but they haven't actually come up with any suggestions for cooperation, and I think a cooperation would be really important. And Kemal, for instance, from Sweden, Artists for Peace, is not here today, and not Antti from Finnish Artists for Peace, and I don't know anyone from Norway, but they are not here. And that, I think we should somehow reach out to them and ask them for help. And then to Leo, since there is a conference in Vienna in May, would it be possible to have the 50th anniversary of the OSCE and a new summit on the agenda to talk about it and to take a stance on it from this meeting in Vienna and say that why doesn't the Austrian government do something? That is a question to Leo. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before Leo answers, I will let Maria Mutt come in. And before you start, we have 6 minutes left of this session. I think since we have 5 hands raised, we will, be a little bit later. But the discussions are very important. So let's just keep on talking. Welcome, Maria Mutt.
Thank you. For me too, I read a lot in English and I listen, but I seldom speak, so it feels a bit difficult to convey one's thoughts. But this question about Sweden and the quick turn towards NATO, I think it has to be mentioned that we have a very strong organization in the Confederation of Swedish Enterprise, that are, it is running a think tank, Fri Värld, which is cooperating very strongly with the Atlantic Council. And they have very strong connections towards the media. And in a wider context, I feel that the whole era of neoliberalism, or the fundamental market economy, has been sold in as a process or freedom, but it's combined now more evidently all the time that it's combined with authoritarian concentration of power towards the freedom of thinking and opinion. And that is something really scaring. Yes, yeah. There were so many other things, because when Ingeborg said this about this is partly another thing, but when she said that only sending more is a really question I have, because in this situation, when there is a sort of furious lion, and if you should stop sending weapons in this situation, which you have run into, I'm of the opinion that this war could have been avoided. But being in this situation, it seems unrealistic to say, because then it will be just a massacre. So how in this situation to get some sort of hold of the Russian forces then? So when, I mean, in US, it's evident that having a personal weapon hasn't made the society more secure. But as long as there are so many galenskap and vansinne, I think it could be perhaps necessary to more put forward that what one demands of education, of peace education, and in negotiation there should be psychological competences taking part and so on. But it's hard to go into this arm discussion, because one is, that was the reflection. And the last thing is that I think that when the climate, I mean, the transition from fossil fuels, it's really threatening the oil industry. And war and armament is war, keeping war alive. And it's really a new marketplace for the oil industry that I think it's quite understandable. So yeah, one has to take that in thought, that the oil industry has so much interest in this armament process. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Maria, and welcome, Leo Gabriel.
Now it is. Since it was mentioned several times, the role of the media, I feel personally touched because I'm a journalist. And I want to recall that the media is not just what journalists do or not do coming out of their head. The media have a structure where above the journalist there is an editing force, which is most of the time politically also nominated, and above the editors there is the ownership. That's to say, we have to approach the question of the media not just as with the idea that they are independent and they are structurally part of the system, and the system is wrong, covering media and parliaments. Like I read now, astonishing from the Social Democratic Party, from the Green Party, from everywhere. In the parliament, there was no open space for those who didn't agree with to go to the NATO, apparently. So we should take up in a very profound way the restructuring of our democratic system. Perhaps I'm sounding a little too radical to you, but I have had this other experience. Look, in Latin America, in Chile, and then in Colombia, there was a change possible because the structure of participation of the people have changed there. They managed through violent, sometimes violent demonstration in Chile on the side of the repressive forces. Now we have in Peru another situation. And what do people claim? Where system change, we need to have a new constitutional process in order to refunnel not only the peace initiative, but many others too. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. And before we move on, I would suggest that we just keep the discussion going. And if you have some need to move yourself or take a break, you're very welcome. And 6:15, we will start with the next session. Kerstin Tuomala, welcome again.
I want to comment on Ulla Klötzer. You said that we in the north are safe. We are not safe. There is Murmansk with the nuclear weapons, and the officials in Finland says that in Lapland there should be a kind of knutpunkt. Vad är knutpunkt på engelska? Knutpunkt.
Cross point. Crossing point.
Crossing point. Because here is Norway, here is Sweden, here is Russia, here is Finland, without any sea between us. So it's one of the way to Russia, and in the Leningrad area is the other critical point in Finland. But it's very dangerous here. We want to live in peace and live in peace with the Norwegians, with the Sami people, with the Swedes and with the Russians. But they don't let us.
Thank you, Kerstin. And now to Tord.
Well, I hope I have my mic. Oh, yes, it's on. I think it's very important that we don't see ourselves as victims. There is no way forward when we focus mainly on that it's the media or some other military industrial complex or fossil capital or you name it. And that big thing is sort of the big obstacles. Because if we put ourselves in that position, we make ourselves in the end powerless. Of course, we have to analyze, and of course, we have to protect ourselves. It was really horrifying to hear about how you can't even go out in the streets of Helsinki and not and you feel threatened if you have peace demands. So of course one have to adjust to such realities, but not the bottom line. Then one have to find other things. And I was a media teacher for 20 years, and I constantly asked and made actually the students to check what did they actually do when they consume media. And it was entertainment or facts. But there was one thing they couldn't place in these two boxes, and that was music. And I see Sean Conner say here, how did he wake up to the peace movement? It was music. With other words, if they want to destroy us, well, then we make a very good music that is so good that we win a lot of hearts. And then they have problems with that, because we have to find ways where we are not victims, where we are creating something. And I think what happened in Sweden when people felt there is no one who is going to take care of us if there is a really crisis. So 150 out of 290 municipalities listen to the call from Söderhamn to plant potatoes. This is extraordinary. We are doing something ourselves. I'm not saying that we should give up protesting against the way the biased mass media, but I'm not so, what do you say? I'm not so surprised. In the 70s, they called us Green Khmer, the anti-nuclear power movement. And that was only literally, right? That was just a big propaganda thing. Now we are the agents of dictators, which is, of course, very, very much worse. This situation is, I'm not saying that the situation is not bad. But what I'm trying to say that is that we have to celebrate some kind of convergence culture and celebrate our way of getting together, seeing that we have to stand up for each other. Like, I mean, Walden Bellow is constantly threatened to his life. And anyway, he stands up at midnight talking to us and talking about the need for solidarity with us. And this is what we need. We have to sort of get away from the victim identity to the identity of proudness for being together, working for something which is maybe so not, you know, peace on earth, peace with earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tord. We have 4 people on the list and we have 6 minutes. So I ask you to be short. Lena Jarlöv, please go ahead.
Yes, I just want to be a little positive about these artists for peace. I don't know if those are organized, but in Sweden we have a very nice example about drawers uprisal against nuclear weapons and against NATO. And it is 150 drawers, artists who makes drawings, and there is an exhibition going around in Sweden now. It was in Gothenburg until now, I think, and then it will go further, and there is a book, and it is very nice. It is funny and beautiful and interesting drawings and texts about what's going on, and it is really a good example for us to laugh about it. So I recommend it. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Ingeborg, welcome.
Thank you. Two comments. One is to Maria. Sending arms to Ukraine once the war is on, with the assumption that...
Sorry, Ingeborg.
Yes?
You were... we lost you for a moment there. Could you take it from the start?
Okay. No, I have two... Maria, who is afraid of what happened arms so that the people can protect themselves. And this is the mainstream thinking, that Russia will do massacres if they do not have opposition. I think that these assumptions are totally wrong. There has to be two in order to fight. And we have to give Russia now a possibility of getting out of this situation, because for years, way before the 24th of February 2022, there has been a mistrust in Russia, and we have given Russia the blame for everything that is wrong in the world. So we need to meet Russia with some possibilities of getting out of this terrible situation, be it through promising less sanctions or getting rid of the sanctions. If Russia is withdrawing troops, we need to go back to the Minsk agreement and insist on negotiations. Should Ukraine be a neutral country? Should Crimea be Russian? The Minsk agreement says that it should be several years to discuss this. We need to send UN troops into Donbass to overlook a withdrawal of troops at the same time as we stop or reduce the sanctions. That is one thing. Be aware of this assumption. Don't get into the logic of war. Secondly, when it comes to the north, I come from northern Norway, and a wonderful thing of the north is that during harsh periods, harsh weather, poverty, etc., the survival of the people in the north has been through cooperation. And there is a multi-ethnic and multinational cooperation in the north that can be a model for any conflict in wherever it takes place. So we need to get back to this feeling of being one north. Listen to Gorbachev's talk in Murmansk when he speaks highly about a Nordic peace zone in the north. So the people of the north knows very well that we depend on each other for survival, and we don't want the north to be a militaristic area prone to disasters. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see, Maria, you have raised your hand. I will not let you comment because we are running out of time. Please use the chat in order to comment further. I will let Ulla and Kemal give very short responses before we go to the next.
Thank you. First of all, Ingeborg, I support you 100%. And if it would be in my power, I would elect you president of the Nordic countries until forever. And to Kerstin, I would say, I didn't mean that you are militarily safe. You are sitting on an explosive area, really, with Murmansk. What I meant was that you maybe can go out into the streets of whatever, Rovaniemi, without being thrown with, we are not being thrown with stones, but we are feeling very insecure when we go into the streets of Helsinki. Maybe the situation there is a bit different in the north. I didn't mean that you are safe militarily. No, by no way. But I still didn't get an answer to my question to Leo. Would it be possible in May in Vienna to take up the subject of a new OSCE summit in 2025? Please answer. Thank you.
I suggest we take that in next session, because we have a second speakers from Austria, which I think the combination of the two will be excellent for summing up today's discussions.
Yes, and I just want to let Kemal give very, 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 very short comment.
Thank you very much. I am very happy to be part of the discussion. I want to say thank you very much to everybody of you. Now I agree you very well. I think it's very important to think friendly. We have a lot of problems. The big question is how we can do for the people which have the hell in the war in Russia and in the Ukraine. What is the solution? Also solution to make freedom in the area. So we have a lot of problem between media in Sweden, in Finland, and also in the world. I think it is very important to have our together make something good for freedom. I think it's enough. Thank you very much. And Swedish people really work for the question, and I know a lot of our friends fighting for the question, like Tord and a lot of you also. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kemal. I think we have to take a step towards next session. There will be possibilities to discuss also at the end of that.